Hey everyone, this is my labor and delivery story, and I've shared this story on my Dutch channel, but I haven't shared it on this English channel, and I wanted to share it before I have a second labor and delivery story to tell after August when our second baby arrives. If you want to watch the Dutch video, I will link it in the description box. But yeah, let's begin. Victor was born in September 2016, and that summer was really warm. And I remember the last few weeks I was mostly laying on bed in my underwear because it was just so warm and I was feeling so tired and uncomfortable. And I actually do have pictures, but I'm not going to share them. They're not very flattering. But yeah, it was very warm, and then my due date came and nothing happened. And then the next day and the next day and the next day, and nothing was happening apart from light menstrual cramps, sort of the cramps that you get when you get your period. They would come every now and then, sometimes for a while in the morning, and I was losing parts of my mucus plug. It didn't come out at once, but over the course of a few days I lost parts of it. But other than that, nothing was really happening. So I had this feeling like this baby is just never going to come out and I will be pregnant forever. But of course, midwife or the hospital would of course have induced labor or whatever. And then on day 5 after my due date, I had an appointment at the midwife's office for a membrane strip. And I was not looking forward to that at all. I really didn't want it. I don't think it's very painful, but it can be. I'm not sure. But yeah, it was day 4 and nothing had happened. And then the day of the appointment came, day 5 after my due date, and I woke up with contractions. So I was very relieved that it started naturally. And I think I woke up because of the contractions at around 5:30. And that night something else had happened because this may be TMI, just a quick warning here. I was losing some fluid a little bit and it was brownish reddish, so I wasn't sure if it was blood or if there was meconium in the amniotic fluid. And I actually contacted the midwife that night. And I believe she thought that it was blood and that it was okay for now, so we didn't act up on it. And then, well, the next morning I woke up with the contractions and I just stayed in bed and tried to breathe through them. Because at that point that wasn't very hard because, well, when contractions first start, they're not that intense. And then after a while my husband woke up and he was really excited, like, oh, is it going to happen today? And then it's like 8 or 8:30 we called the midwife and she came by to check how far I was dilated, which was 2 centimeters at a time. And I was really feeling worried and overwhelmed because the contractions got more intense, of course. And of course it was obvious that the baby was going to be born very soon and I was worrying about the pain. And yeah, we talked about that. Then the midwife left us and I was just dealing with the contractions all morning, big part of the afternoon at home. I was in bed sometimes I was sitting on the table and leaning on a pillow. And funny story, and a package arrived, I think at about 4 o'clock. I did open the package. It was from Sweet Family Life, the vloggers from America. They live in Pennsylvania. So that package was perfect timing because it was a nice distraction from the pain. And yeah, so I opened that, and in the meantime my husband was packing our bags because we had called the midwife and agreed that we would be in the hospital at around 5. And then yeah, we drove to the hospital and I remember feeling awful during the car ride. The contractions were very tough. Then we arrived at the hospital. We found a wheelchair, my husband parked the car, and we got to the labor and delivery suite. And my husband went to the car again to pick up some bags. And in the meantime I was sitting in this huge chair that was in that labor and delivery suite. And then the hospital staff and my husband, they were working on setting up the pool because I wanted to give birth in a birthing pool. And that took quite a while. And then when the pool was set up, I got into the pool, which felt great. That felt really amazing. And the water was just so comfortable, and yeah, I loved it. So at first I loved it in the pool, but very quickly after that, I think I was in there for about 20 minutes, it became clear that the baby had, that there was meconium in the amniotic fluid. And I wasn't feeling comfortable in the bath anymore because it was the water was obviously very warm. And every time that I got a contraction, I was feeling very, very warm. So those two things combined, it was just too much warmth. And I wanted to get out of the bath. And apart from that, I read online that the bath could help with the pain, with pain relief, but that wasn't the case with me. I know this is different for a lot of women, but because the bath was so comfortable, all my attention was focused on the uncomfortableness of the contractions or something. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, I didn't like it, which I never expected because I thought the birthing pool would be awesome. But yeah, it was too warm, and also because of Victor and the meconium in the amniotic fluids, I had to get out of the bath. So I went back to the chair that I started, or well, I was before in that chair, in the big chair in the labor and delivery suite. And this all happened in the same room, so the chair was next to the pool. Because of the meconium in the amniotic fluid, they had to closely monitor Victor's heartbeat. And yeah, I was just breathing through the contractions, which became more and more difficult because the pain was awful. It was, I don't know, it was like the worst pain you can imagine. And I remember at one point, like my whole body was shaking when there was another contraction. And especially the last part of the contractions, like before you actually start pushing, they were the worst. They were so terrible. Like, I'm not looking forward to going through that again at all. After a while, the hospital staff suggested that I should try the birth stool that was there. So I sat on that with a few contractions, but it turned out that Victor was getting a lot of stress from that position, so I couldn't do that. And then I tried to sit on my hands and knees in the bed. But I don't remember why I didn't keep doing that. I think Victor got too much stress from that position also. And then I ended up just laying on my back on the birthing bed. Now again, they were watching Victor's heartbeat very closely to monitor his stress. But after a while, Victor got really too much stress from me being on my back too. So between contractions, I had to lay on my left side because that was the best position for him. It was a little scary when all the hospital staff was looking at the heart monitor all the time, and they were looking very seriously. And I thought to myself, just stay calm and do everything that they say, then everything will be fine. So I listened to their instructions and tried to have faith that everything would turn out okay. Now at that point my water still didn't break, so they asked me if they could break my water by hand, and I was like, okay, sure. And then everything after they broke my water, everything started to move a little faster. They checked again how far I was dilated, and to my surprise it was 10 centimeters. And I remember, yeah, I was just so surprised because it felt like it would go on and on for hours and hours. But suddenly I could start pushing. So it was still like that. I had to be on my back when I got a contraction and push for as long as I could. And then when the contraction was over, I went back to laying on my side. Now the contractions were horrible all the time, but when I got to the pushing stage, it wasn't as horrible, or well, everything just felt a little bit better because I could be active, I could actually push. And before that I just had to wait and breathe through the contractions. And then every time I got a contractions, I just pushed for as long and as hard as I could. And I did that for about an hour. So Victor was moving towards the outside world, but it didn't go fast enough. And then they wanted to give me the episiotomy, because of course he was having stress and I was becoming really tired. So the episiotomy was performed under local anesthetic, and so I didn't feel it, but I heard the sound of it, and that was such a weird experience. I really didn't know that it would have such a specific sound. I don't know how to describe it, but it was very loud. And unfortunately they cut through a vein, so there was immediately a lot of blood that I lost. But then Victor was born very fast, and I was so surprised that he was there suddenly. So the episiotomy, yeah, it really helped apparently. And then he was put on my chest, and I didn't cry. I was just very surprised and relieved that he was finally there. I'm feeling a little emotional now. But yeah, then it was suddenly over, the whole pushing stage, and I was looking at him together with my husband, of course, and we kissed him. And yeah, it was very special and unreal at the same time. Now in the meantime, there were suddenly a lot of extra doctors and nurses around my bed, because like I said, I lost a lot of blood because of the episiotomy, and also because my uterus didn't contract after birth the way it should be. So I kept bleeding, well, my uterus kept bleeding too. So it was really urgent that I could do something to stop the bleeding. I got this shot in my leg that didn't work, or didn't work enough, so then I got IV, I guess, with medicine, and then a stronger medicine, and they needed to stitch me down there. So that was going on also with local anesthetic, and all of this wasn't according to my birth plan at all, because I wanted that they didn't cut the cord so fast, because when the cord is still like pulsing, there's a lot of blood going from mom to baby, with a lot of iron, which is beneficial for their health. And I really wanted to, well, give all that blood a chance to flow from me to him, but it didn't, well, this couldn't be the case. And I really didn't want the medicine, but of course that was necessary. So yeah, I got the medicine. I think the medicine is called Syntocin. I'm not sure, but I think I got Syntocin, and that worked. And I remember that I was feeling like I was losing my conscience, but I guess the bleeding stopped just in time, and I remained conscious the whole time. And I remember telling the midwife, or asking her to please tell me if she wanted to tell me afterwards all that was happened, but because it was really overwhelming and there was so much happening all at the same time. When the bleeding stopped, it got a little more quiet in the room because some of the hospital staff left, and the midwife, she told me everything that happened, just a recap, which I really appreciated. And yeah, then I think she went home, and I was feeling so cold. I was feeling extremely cold. So the nurse that was there, she put all these towels and blankets on me, and I kept feeling cold. I asked my husband for my warm socks. I brought warm socks. And Victor had been on Daniel's chest for a while by then. And eventually we had to wait for a while, but then they came in the room. They wheeled another bed into the room, the beds that I could stay in for the night, which was way more comfortable, by the way. The bed in the delivery suite was extremely uncomfortable. But well, anyway, carefully I went to the other bed because I was feeling very weak. When I would sit up, I was just like, well, it was clear that I lost a lot of blood. I wasn't feeling great at all. And then we had to stay in the hospital for that reason for a few days, because I could barely walk from my bed to the toilet. And yeah, so that is my labor and delivery story. It was a very intense experience, way more intense than I ever expected. And yeah, now there is another labor and delivery coming in August, when we have our second baby. So I hope that will be a little easier. So my first labor and delivery started at 5:30 in the morning and Victor was born at 10 in the evening, and I hope the second time around it will be a little faster and hopefully a little bit easier, and I hope the baby won't have as much stress as Victor had. But we'll see when the time comes. Eventually I will tell you my second labor and delivery story, and let's just hope it will be a much easier story and also an easier story to tell. I hope you liked the video, and please tell me a little bit about your labor and delivery story, and if you had to process everything. I kept thinking about it for a very long time. It was something I really had to process, and I'm wondering if more women are like that or had that experience. So yeah, please let me know. Thanks for watching. I hope I wasn't all over the place, but if you have any questions, you can of course leave them in the comments, and then I will try to get back to every single one of you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!